with Urianger staying behind to help the Loporrits prepare for the arrival of mankind. We have returned to the surface of Etheirys with Y'shtola and Thancred. We're in mind to figure out what exactly happened here whilst we were gone, and Lucia reveals that it took a lot of effort to get this place back under their control. More effort than they had in fact, so they had to turn to the Alliance for aid. At first, many were not willing to help the Garleans, but they soon saw that the Garleans they know no longer exist. All that remains are those in need of a place to take refuge. With the aid of the Alliance, things have started to settle here in Garlemald. Lucia and Maxima are going to stay behind and act as a place of refuge for any who needs it. To complete this exchange of information, we tell them everything that occurred on the moon. They are saddened to hear that even though we were successful in our endeavor, it amounted to nothing. The final days are coming, and there is nothing we can do to stop it. The rest of the Scions have been given leave, so we meet up in Sharlayan. It is here that we reveal to them what occurred on the moon. Zodiac is slain. The moon is a vessel created by Hydaelyn to shepherd the people of Etheirys to safety. We're all in agreement that fleeing the star must be the final option. To leave Etheirys to her fate would spell doom for all reflections. But where do we even start? The ancients could never figure out the source of the final days, and instead amplified the celestial currents by harnessing the power of darkness, sacrificing half of their number to create Zodiac. There is a reason they called it the final days, because they truly believed it was the beginning of the end of all life on Etheirys. Just as Y'shtola mentions that we should talk to the Loporrits collaborators, Tataru barges in, stating that the forum is hosting a public assembly. Heading outside toward the rostra reveals a crowd gathering right at the entrance. With 99 of their number agreeing, the forum removed the enchantment which stopped them from revealing their plans. The Telephoroi are a very real threat to the world, but normally Sharlayan never bothers with petty disturbances outside of their border. But this time, it is different. Their goal was the final days, a calamity which spells doom for this very star. Some 270 years ago, the expedition into the Dravanian hinterlands began as they attempted to gain access to the Ethereal Sea. They never found the Ethereal Sea, but what they did find was Hydaelyn herself. She told them of the coming calamity, and that the moon was a vessel by which all life might be spared. Just like Nyan Krep's hope was the ark which saved the lives of many and founded the nation of Sharlayan, this vessel will bring them to a new home. Once they were convinced that what she spoke of was true, they began amassing a wealth of knowledge for the journey to come. The people have been dismissed and told to return to their duties as per normal until they are ready to leave this star. With the crowd gone, Alisaie and Alphino want to speak with their father. They tell him that they do not reject the forum's proposal. In fact, it is a good idea. Those that wish to flee are free to do so, but with their time spent with the Scions, they have visited a great many of nations and learned more about people than any tome could have told them. There are people out there willing to die for the life they once knew. Some would not or cannot join in the evacuation of our star. What would happen to those who are unable or unwilling to go along with them? It's a hard decision for any to make, and that is why we fight, to make sure that not a single soul is sacrificed in their plan. They repeat their grandfather's words. To ignore the plight of those one might conceivably save is not wisdom, it is indolence. We don't ask for his understanding, just that he doesn't inhibit our ability to operate within Sharlayan. Voshino allows us to do whatever we want as long as we don't get in their way. With the proceedings done, we return to our room. Again we hear that strange voice, followed by a vision of the final days. Our thoughts are interrupted by a knock at our door. It is here that you are allowed to decide who the visitor is. As our journey started with Thancred, it chose Thancred to be our visitor. He has come to reiterate the same sentiment we have been feeling for quite some time. The coming of the final day spells doom for all worlds. Fleeing Etheirys would mean that everything we did to save the first was meaningless. This is where we come in. He wants us to keep him in check. His mind won't allow for the possibility of leaving Reen behind to her destruction, which means he doesn't know if he can be pragmatic this time. To run away, even when running away is the only choice left to him. So, if we see him turning a blind eye to the harsh reality, he wants us to beat some sense into him. Nobody else is more qualified to keep him in line. We agree to do so. With that discussion over, he returns to his room and we to ours. The final days can happen at any moment. We must rest for the morrow to come. A short while earlier in the Alamegan Quarter, two civilians are discussing the situation with the Telephoroi. They can both barely believe that the towers have disappeared just like that. It's thanks to the brave men and women of the Ilzabad contingent who gave their lives to destroy the tower which lay in the center of Garlemald. Without their unfaltering will, none of this would have happened. As for the now tempered Garleans, she worries that they've been allowed within the borders of Radz-at-Han, to which he reassures her that the Garleans will receive treatment to cure their tempering, but won't be allowed in the city proper, which relieves the both of their worries. She knows that their brothers and sisters are among their lot, but she cannot say that she's eager to welcome them home. Their conversation was overheard by a man who, upon hearing their words, thick black ether oozes out of him for only a second. Meanwhile in Ishgard, Erenville has been sent to claim another item of great importance in his ever-growing list. This has brought him to Ishgard. There is a curious-looking fellow stumbling about in the streets until he collapses on the floor. Erenville offers him aid and helps him back onto his feet. The man doesn't even offer a word of gratitude, just continues on his path unabated. For a split second, that black ether oozes out of him before disappearing. Erenville blames it on the shadows playing a trick on his mind, but he admits that even though the towers are gone and the Telephoroi are no more, he feels like everything is about to get much worse. We awaken to the news that none of us were prepared for. The final days has come, and Thavnir is designated its first target. Creatures are created from nothing, wreaking havoc on the populace. There is little to discuss, and we'd learn more from joining our allies on the battlefield.
And lo, vile beasts did rise. Leaving naught in their wake but blood and ash. Sun scorches earth and boils seas. And our sins ascend unto the heavens. Three dooms to unmake all we were.
The skies are burning just as they were in the illusions of Amarot presented to us by Emmett Selk. The Satrap meets us on the beach and tells us everything that has happened thus far. In the middle of the night, the isle itself was rocked by tremors, and the earth cried out. Then the heavens began to burn and brought about beasts unlike which we have never seen before. But the final days didn't create these beasts. Unlike the creation magics running rampant for the Amarotines, it is the people themselves being twisted into these abhorrent creatures. The first creature to be observed appeared in the center of their city. He wrought havoc upon everyone and everything he encountered. They bear superficial resemblance to their divinities of Eld, so people have begun to refer to them as blasphemies, ungodly abominations. The largest creature has brought itself to the north of the island. It is there that the Radiant Host is being dispatched to put an end to it and its horde. Vritra has also been sent there, but they hope that his compassion will not stay his hand, as he knows that the blasphemies were his children not too long ago. We tell Y'shtola that we will aid him and his Radiant Host, which brings us to the dense sacred jungle in the north, Vanaspati. The skies over Thavnir are aflame, and panic spreads throughout the populace like wildfire. One by one, civilians are twisted into grotesque fiends, hells bent on slaughtering everything in sight. The deadliest of these creatures leads its newly spawned kin through the jungle, towards a number of smaller settlements, and as such, Y'shtola has dispatched his Radiant Host to forestall the carnage. Though Vritra too lends his strength to this cause, even that may prove insufficient, and thus do the Scions enter the fray. We arrive to the shores of Vanaspati and witness horrors that will haunt us until our final days. A mother turning into a blasphemy right before her children's very eyes, which in turn causes them to turn into blasphemies. Our hand is forced to slay them all, and forget what they once were but a moment ago. Along the path we encounter a Terminus Wrecker. It is said that this used to be an Arcosodara, as its physiology suggests so. It uses its trunk-like organ to inhale nearby energies and unleash them upon us. We put it out of its misery and push onwards to the peak of Vanaspati, to the sun's ascent. It is here that we come face to face with the blasphemy that started it all, Svarbanu. It is said that its appearance has many similarities with the first beast of Eld, the one the ancients had to deal with. We are not sure why this is the case, but it has to be more than a coincidence. Some scholars theorize that maybe certain primordial fears are burned into our very soul. It has an unnatural roar which shakes us to our very core. It almost sounds like it's in pain, begging us to end its life so it can be free of this torment. The Scions use all the strength they have left, and together we slay the first beast of the final days. With its demise, one thing has become crystal clear to Y'shtola. This entire time she has been unable to see these beasts by sensing their ether. Where the beast once stood, all she could see was emptiness. Once the people are seized by the transformation, their ether begins to rot away until nothing remains of who they once were. Meaning that there is no way to save these people once they become a blasphemy, for there is nothing left to be saved. It is a fate far worse than death, for not even their souls return to the ethereal sea. To think that the natural cycle of life could be cut off so easily. Vritra arrives at the scene and announces that even with the demise of their leader, the Horde are content on continuing his legacy of hate. This is why Y'shtola believes that Vritra should announce to everyone that he has been the ruler of Radz-at-Han for many, many years. To which Vritra refuses. He doesn't want to cause more panic for the people, and will instead fight endlessly against the hordes and inspire hope in those who watch. Estinian joins him in the fray, as his view from the sky will provide us with knowledge about the current state of Thavnir. The rest of us join Y'shtola in Radz-at-Han to plan our next course of action. The Scions are going to split up and try to find out what exactly caused the transformation of the first blasphemy. It may help us uncover a way in which we can prevent these transformations from happening at all. Once each Scion is finished with their respective inquiries, we are to reconvene outside the Megaduta. Graha is assisting us on our search. We question many individuals, and what we have come to is thus. Right after the earth shook and let out a cry, a commotion was heard in the western side of the markets. The beast was spotted here surrounded by its minions. They wreaked havoc and began eating and killing everyone in sight until it eventually flew away. But from what we can tell, the man had already turned into a beast by the time they reached the bazaar. This leads us to believe that we might find out more by heading in the opposite direction the beast came from. We question the people within the Mehane, and their tales are very exact. It was the man named Kalzal who turned into the first beast. If that name rings a bell, It should, as we met him in Yedlamad with Matzia. He was here on that night speaking with merchants. The conversation turned grim, and before their very eyes he turned into a blasphemy, which in turn caused those at his table to turn into blasphemies. One thing to mention is that this all occurred before the heavens began to burn. While we now have a lead as to who became the first beast, we now need to find out why. We are pointed in the direction of his neighborhood and learn that for a while Kal'zal had been deep in debt. With the towers looming on the island, trade between the provinces had begun to dwindle. Yet, as of late, he had been seen acting happier, more cheerful. Apparently, a generous deal was about to break between him and Ruveda Fibers. It was all he needed to turn around his current predicament. But that was not the end of it. Ruveda Fibers were offered a better deal, and with heavy hearts they had to decline Kal'zal's offer. Though he tried to put on a brave face, it was clear as day that he had given up all hope. We are all but to assume that everything began with Kal'zal. He felt such piercing and profound despair. Such intense emotions were the catalyst for his transformation. With our investigation finished, we return to the meetup spot and wait for our fellow scions there. Our findings are much the same. The first beasts to be seen used to be people who were filled with despair. The only key detail the others missed is that they transformed into blasphemies before the heavens burn, meaning that nowhere is safe. At any point, people could turn into a blasphemy before it shows signs of the final days. The amount of scared and injured people gathered at this place is numerous. If any one of them give in to their darkest emotions, they'll turn into a monster and begin attacking their kin in a blind rage. What was left of who they once were will be no more. They won't even be granted the mercy of death, for their souls do not return unto ether. The satrap appears to try and ease the hearts of the many. Yet, one grandmother is unfazed and begs him to tell her anything about Palaka's stand. They do not have any information to share as of yet, but at that very same moment, Matzia appears to tell the satrap that Palaka's stand is overrun by blasphemies. Upon hearing those words, the woman begins to give in to her despair. Her ether rots and devours her soul and her corporeal form, turning her into a blasphemy. Her transformation triggers others to give in to despair and transform. It is a never-ending cycle, one that we try to break by defeating the monsters here and allowing civilians to escape. But the blasphemies are mighty, mightier than a single radiant host. Some of them manage to break through our defenses.
Vitra, our people, you must save them. My son, this is our job.
Enough! You must run. For their sake and your own. Yes, you will survive. You must.
Eventually, G'raha notices that the situation is dire. The satrap is no more, and the people are in need of someone to take charge. In his mind, this must be reminiscent of the Sin Eaters, monsters turning fellow humans into monsters, causing others to panic, a story he must have seen repeatedly in his time as the Crystal Exarch. He decides that enough is enough and takes action. He commands the Radiant host to form a line and hold the blasphemies with the help of Thancred and Y'shtola. He orders the civilians to run as far away as possible from this location and to bring the wounded with them. And finally, he tells Alphino, Alisaie, Matzia, and the Warrior of Light to return to Palakistan and see how the situation over there truly is. We clear the path that leads to Palakistan, yet when we arrive in the village, we can see the horrors which befell it. The amount of people remaining can be counted on one hand. Not wanting to assume the worst, we ask the remaining villagers some questions and tend to their wounds. They are all grief-stricken, unwilling to live after what the beast did. What we find out from the village elder is that they sent more than half of their number out of the village when the final days began. He doesn't know their whereabouts, but prays they are safe. However, there is one couple he would ask us to save. He saw them running towards Agama Temple with a blasphemy in pursuit. He doesn't believe they'll be able to evade such a fiend whilst in possession of their child. Heading toward Agama Temple, we hear a man shouting in agony. Turning the corner, we find the husband lying wounded on the floor, surrounded by blasphemies. We defeat them only to find that the wound is a fatal one. He gave his life so that his wife and daughter could live on, but in his final moments, he begins to give in to despair. He doesn't want to die now, not when they need him so. Before the transformation takes him, we kneel beside him and tell him not to worry. We'll find his wife and daughter. We'll make sure they get back safe and live happy, fulfilling lives. Hearing those words halts his transformation. Now he can rest in peace. We aren't about to let those words become a lie. We scour the nearby jungle for any signs of life, slaying any blasphemies that cross our path. Yet, both our searches lead us back to Palakistan, with neither of us finding a single hint of the survivors. Meanwhile, in the skies above Thavenir, Estinian is contacted via Link Pearl and told the news of what happened in Palakistan and Radz-at-Han. He then reveals to Vritra that Ahriman died protecting a father from a blasphemy. The people down there are leaderless and looking for guidance. It is time for him to step out of the shadows. It is what Ahriman would have wanted. Vritra is uncertain. What good would him revealing himself be? He is no different from the very beasts which attack them now. All it would do is cause more chaos and panic. Perhaps so. Conflict between man and dragon has always existed. Hraesvelgir and Shiva only became united in death. Blood had to be spilled for man and dragon to coexist. It was man's fear of dragon which reignited their war. Nidhogg then perpetuated this war for hundreds of years. And yet, if the chasm between us was too deep, Hraesvelgir wouldn't have brought Y'sail upon his back to save us from the Garlean Empire. He wouldn't have given the Warrior of Light his eye to put an end to the Dragonsong War. And Estinian would have been waging a never-ending war of vengeance. It is because man and dragon can work together that these things didn't come to pass. Ahriman served him and his people. In this time of unprecedented crisis, he turned to him. Maybe it's time he placed his trust in him instead. It will not be an easy decision, but the future of Radz-at-Han hangs in the balance. Vritra thinks long and hard about this decision, and finally comes to the answer that he is ready to do what he must. Alphino and Alisaie have finished tending to the people's wounds and have come to aid us in finding Mevan and her daughter. Just before we leave, we check one last time around the village's perimeter just to make sure that no blasphemies linger nearby and will attack once we leave. The coast is clear, and Matzia recommends that we go to one of their sacred temples, Perusia. It is here that the villagers left for refuge, yet the place is already surrounded by numerous beasts. We deal with what we can, but a fair number of villagers have already succumbed to their wounds. We were too late to save them all, but at least for now the rest of them are safe. Safe, but scared. If they keep clinging to their grief, it'll only be a matter of time before they become the monsters they fear. We are unable to find a way to ease their hearts, but it is Matsuya who reminds them that this is a place of worship. If their hearts quake, then they should cast their minds towards the heavens and remember the teachings of the old gods. The crowd begins to recite the teachings. Know this, my children, there is more ugliness than beauty in this world. To live is to suffer, to drink of calamity and drown in anguish, to toil and be tested, always and ever. 'Tis a perilous path you walk. Death lurks in the dark and is the sole promise that awaits at journey's end. You will tremble with terror, you will weep tears of anger and despair, but do not avert your eyes. See your life for what it is. Then will you see how the hardships make you strong. Every doubt reforged the scales for your armor, every agony to temper your blade. The group is now at ease after repeating those teachings. Together they will return to Palakistan, and they hope that we will find Mevan and her daughter before it's too late. Out of the corner of our eye, we spot a blasphemy chasing a person. Following it leads us to the font of Maya, and we see Mevan being cornered by a horror. She is clutching her baby tightly, begging the monster to cease its advance. Just as it's about to grab hold of them, Alphino attacks the monster, distracting it for a few seconds and allowing Alizé to charge in and deliver a blow. But the plan availed naught, as the blasphemy blocked Alizé's attack and launched her towards her brother. With no more distractions, it grasps Mevan by the neck, ending her life. It then throws her lifeless body into the font. Without even a second's delay, we jump headfirst into the murky waters below. We find the corpse of Mevan, but her daughter is nowhere to be seen. Eventually we find the babe, but it's impossible to tell if she has survived. All we can do is bring her to the surface. The babe suffers no wounds, but magic can do nothing for her. What she needs is a change of clothes and the warmth of a fire. Before we could begin to make our way back to Palakistan, it seems like we have made enough noise to attract every blasphemy within a couple marms. If we flee now, they'll follow us to Palakistan and start the horrors from last night once more. Instead, we will hold them off here, and it is Matsuya who will deliver the baby back home. We know he can do it. We believe in him. We won't let a single blasphemy slip by. Now go before it is too late. Matsuya knows the way home and runs as fast as his legs can carry him. In the middle of his journey, the little one begins to give in to despair. The black ether surrounds her corporeal form. Even a baby as young as this is affected by this tragedy. Upon seeing this, Matsuya is shaken to his very core. He begins to recite the teachings of the old gods once more in an attempt to calm himself down. But it isn't working. Soon that very same black ether surrounds him too. Just when everything seemed hopeless, the noise him and the baby were making attracted two nearby blasphemies who now block their path. This is it. This is the end. He cannot face one blasphemy, let alone two. Milliseconds before the blasphemies ended both of their lives, Estinian dives on top of one, erasing it from existence. The second is defeated by a fireball from Vritra. With the threat gone and Matsuya safe, the black ether disappears, but it stays with the babe. It isn't until Vritra attempts to calm her down that the ether disappears for her too. The both of them will be escorted to Palakistan whilst Estinian comes to check on our battle at the font. By the time he arrived, the threat had already been dealt with. Before we return to Palakistan, Alizé believes we should give the parents a proper burial. They both gave their lives so that their daughter might live. The least they deserve is to be laid to rest next to one another, something that we're all in agreement of. We gather the bodies and say a quick prayer. It is up to the villagers to perform their funeral rites now. At Palakistan, Vritra reveals to the villagers that he is not the Satrap's ally, but he is the Satrap who has run Radz-at-Han ever since its creation. Vritra soon realizes that all of his fears and doubts wouldn't manifest. The people here are truly thankful for everything he's done, and after receiving such a warm welcome, he is confident about revealing his identity to the people in Radz-at-Han proper. In the midst of this chaos, Nadana has come with her fellow alchemists to provide whatever support they can. This includes handing out cups of hot chai to everyone. Even though danger lurks around every corner, it is especially in times like these that we must remember the little things that give us comfort. Radz-at-Han will come back from this, one day at a time, one step at a time, for that is all any of them can do. The chai has been delivered to everyone in the village. It's almost like magic is at work. With every sip, you can feel their tensions ease ever so slightly. It is through acceptance of what has happened today that the people can gain the strength to move forward. Nadana and Matsuya will stay behind to look after the village. In the meantime, we all return to Radz-at-Han to witness Vritra's proclamation. People begin gathering at the square en masse, and after waiting for a little while, Varshan arrives to deliver the news that he's going to share with the people a great revelation. But before he does, he wishes that they don't avert their eyes, nor be alarmed. See the one he unveils for who he is, and that he means them no harm. Vritra flies through the skies and lands right in front of the crowd. He announces to them all that he has been the satrap of Radz-at-Han for many uncounted years. He divulges all the details that led to their duplicity, and what has been happening behind the curtains all this time.
If I am hearing this right, you were the satrap all along?
Varshan! I mean, Master Vritra, does your divine eye really see all?
Nay, child. While mine eye hath borne witness to the whole of our nation's history, to its future I am blind as thee. Countrymen, calamity the likes of which we have never known is come to Thavnir, our home. Friends and loved ones have been taken from us. I too have lost my closest confidant. Ahawan loved this land and served it with dignity till his dying breath. A nobler satrap there will never be. For so long, I lacked the courage to face you. I will not easily earn your trust, this I know. And yet, I cannot sit idly by and abandon Radz-at-Han to her fate. A font of boundless vibrancy, this jewel of the ocean. Since time immemorial hath she glittered with every color imaginable. To this dragon, slumbering in his dark lair, 'twas a mesmerizing sight, and one that brought no end of joy to my heart. This calamity hath stolen too much from you already, yet so long as you live, the light of Radz-at-Han will never be extinguished. I pray you let me watch over it, over you, and lend me your strength that we might face this trial and those to come as one.
I do not know you, dragon, but I thank you for speaking the truth to us. As divinities, both Manusha and Riga once joined together, so too do I believe that hand in hand, we can overcome this ordeal and welcome an era of peace.
The people have accepted Vritra, and everything he believed would have gone wrong haven't come to pass. They can now move forward to a future of peace with the people of Radz-at-Han, and no more duplicity. It is at this time the Forum have arrived at Radz-at-Han to deliver a message. First, they reveal the calamity that befalls them, the final days. and how even though Thavnir was the first, it is not the last. Eventually, all four corners of the world will succumb to rot and decay until nothing remains. This is why they have been working tirelessly for the last 270 years. The Silver Moon is a vessel capable of shepherding the people of Etheirys to safety. Sharlayan wishes to share this knowledge and technology with everyone on the star, and helping every man, woman, and child they can evacuate to safe harbor. The people are in disbelief hearing Fortunol's words, but the idea of safe refuge is enticing. But Vritra assures them that regardless of the outcome of their discussion, the people will be allowed to pave their own path forward. In the meantime, he'll hear the rest of their proposal in the Meghaduta. Before we can take our leave, Nidana races towards us and asks us to listen to her theory. A person captured by the blackened ether has their ether rot away. Then what allows these monstrosities to continue unabated? It can't be ether, so it must be the other energy she spoke of earlier, Akasha. The despair, grief, and torment in the air is giving the beasts form and giving them the vitality they need to exist. To check her theory, she wants us to take out our Elpis flower. In doing so, we can see the color of the flower is grey and dreary. It darkens until the flower itself rots away to its very core, and the particles left behind slip through our fingers. Which confirms her theories. The flower, which shone so brightly when surrounded by joy, was devoured when surrounded by despair. She gives us a word of warning. The entity which may be causing the final days controls energies beyond our comprehension, and thus we are powerless to forestall it. It makes sense why the ancients were unable to figure out how to stop the final days without the help of Zodiac. Akasha is essentially uncontrollable by man, meaning they were also unable to test for it. One of the Radiant host called out to us, saying that Vritra has prepared a feast for us after everything we have done. It'll be held in the Mehane. However, they want us to stay behind just for a little while, and all the other Scions can go on ahead. The reason they wanted us to stay behind is because they have a delegate of Alliance soldiers here in Thavnir. It seems like the threat of the blasphemies has already begun to spread across Etheirys. Nowhere is safe. That is why they turn to us. They'd like us to help each nation with their problems individually, whenever we have the time to spare. This part leads into the different role quests of Endwalker. I'll cover these individually in due time, but for now, the story continues and we meet the Scions in the Mehane. We order a cup of chai and discuss why we were pulled aside. They can hardly believe that it has already begun to spread across the lands this quickly. There isn't even a sign of the final days in those places, but the blasphemies have already started spawning. We are sick and tired of only being reactive to this calamity. We have no clues as to how we can end this once and for all. Not even the ancients figured out the exact source of this disaster. The only clue we have is that the Watcher told us the flower was named Elpis in their time. It must have some kind of significance, but every living ancient is dead, aside from Hydaelyn, and she herself is unable to communicate with us right now. She must have spent too much of her power in the Tower of Babel. So again, we are left with no options to pursue. We all think long and hard, and Graha arrives at an answer. Not quite dead, but not quite alive either. In our time on the First, he sealed away Elidibus within the Crystal Tower. There may be some remaining fragments left behind which we could communicate to and question about this Elpis and what significance it has. Nobody else can make this journey except for us. So in the meantime, Urianger will be on the moon working hard to make sure all the necessary preparations for our departure are met. Y'shtola will consult Master Matoya to see if she knows a way to reach Hydaelyn from the Ethereal Sea. Alphino will visit the nation's leaders and ascertain just how far the final days has progressed. Estinian will travel throughout the lands and slay the worst of the immediate threats to slow the spread of the calamity. The emotions the final days feast upon will try and consume us time and time again, but we must have faith and remember that our friends and loved ones are out there, somewhere, sharing in our struggle. We are not alone.
So ends the brief respite before the next revelation. Yes, so much left for you to see. Where beginning ends and end begins.
With G'raha's spirit vessel in hand, we head towards Lakeland in the first. We meet Lena at the Censor Gate, knowing that she is curious about the well-being of all the Scions and the Crystal Exarch. We tell her everyone is okay, and relay the message to her that G'raha is living his life to the fullest, that he is happy, hardships and all, which fills her heart with joy just to hear such words. In return, she tells us all is well here. The peace we have gifted them continues, and they work hard to build new lives for themselves. They still occasionally bicker, but they're still optimistic for the morrow. The only negative would be their governance. Debate still rages on today about how the city should run after the Crystal Exarch's absence. Nothing is set in stone thus far, but no matter how they proceed, they will not replace him. Nobody could. We ask if anything strange has happened as of late, to which she replies that nothing has happened, except that Reen has been acting worried for the past 3 days or so. She didn't think much of it at first, but our words coinciding with her worries now has her thinking. She wouldn't ever confide in her, but maybe she'd confide in us. In the meantime, she'll get the key to enter the umbilicus. We are to wait outside the Cabinet of Curiosities for her. While waiting, we collide with many familiar faces. The first to find us is Moren and Beck Lug. He is working on a tome which will chronicle the details of the flood to the Knight's return. He had asked Beck Lug to come down and give him more information about the soul technology employed to bring everyone back home to the source. We chat for a while and answer a great many of Moren's questions until they need to leave, as the books in Yulmore won't collect themselves. Next, we are found by the same 3 children who wish to become warriors of darkness. It seems like their goals haven't changed one bit, but one of them is unsure as to what weapon to learn. We tell him to take up the sword and protect those who are close to him, to which the children reply that he'll just be like Brandon, the warrior of light. We are taken aback by this. Finally, Ardbert and his comrades' names will no longer be shunned as villains, but remembered as heroes who slew the Ascian and saved the realm from peril. The kids go on their merry way, and again we wait for Lena. An unknown voice calls out to us, asking if we'd spare a single thought for her. Of course we didn't, such a cold and cruel and heartless sapling we are. In response, we call out in fervor, "O faithful Feo'ul, loveliest of branches, how I have missed you." If we really missed her, then we'd have asked for her the moment we arrived on the first, but she'll forgive us for now. But next time, we'll have to call with twice the passion. She reveals that she is aware that the final days is happening. Though she wants to help us avert it, it is not the way of the Fae. They will go with the flow of the star. If it leans towards destruction, then so be it. She'd wish for nothing more than to ease our pain by giving us the sweetest of dreams, but she knows we won't accept such a fate. She disappears, saying that the one we've been waiting for has arrived. It is none other than Reen and Lena. Lena has gone ahead and opened the umbilicus for us. We can enter and leave at our leisure. She'll leave us alone with Reen, as we have countless catching up to do. She is happy to hear everyone is well. For the last couple of days, she had been feeling that something was wrong. Though she is the Oracle of Light, she has never spoken to Hydaelyn. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't a connection. As of late, that connection was weakening, growing stronger, weakening, until yesterday, it severed entirely. She awoke in the middle of the night and saw the heavens burning the same way they did during Elidibus's illusions. At first, we are reluctant to tell her exactly why this is, but she urges us to. Whatever the truth is, she can handle it. So we tell her everything, the final days, and what that spells for Etheirys and her reflections. She reiterates that all is well here in the first, so we shouldn't avert our gaze from the horrors before us. If the final days were to arrive, they would be able to handle it. They've learned how to survive, and they will not go quietly. They'll hold out until we can find a way to save all worlds. So long as we continue our fight, so too will they, united in purpose beneath the blazing sky. Reen will consult Lena about the coming final days and how best they should confront it. At the same time, we will confront Elidibus about Elpis and what this means for the Ancients. We enter the Crystal Tower, reminiscing the memories we spent within these walls. But we do not have the time to be idle, and enter the Umbilicus and use Graha's spirit vessel to access the console. The powers of the Circus Tower locate Elidibus and project his form in front of us. He awakens, confused and unaware of everything that has happened since his sealing within the crystal. Upon learning what has occurred, he believes it is within his role of Elidibus to aid us in our time of need. This is because his role is to ensure that there is always a balance between light and dark. Considering Fandaniel caused everything, he will provide us with any knowledge we need. Our understanding of the final days is the same as theirs. Decay took root in places where the celestial currents were the weakest, a phenomenon discovered by the original Fandaniel. If not for his knowledge of the celestial, they would have never forestalled the final days. Though this Fandaniel is very different when compared to the original. He is consumed by self-loathing and hate. It is a better time than any to bring up the Elpis flower. Does he know anything about it?
Elpis. Yes, the name is familiar to me. Yet I know it not as a flower, but a place. A testing facility for determining which of our creations were fit to be released into the world. Many worked there, and before joining the Convocation and assuming the title of Fandaniel, he was their chief. He was Hermes. That is all I know. The crystals tell little of the lives the 14 led prior to their induction. Elpis itself would tell even less. Nary a ruin has survived. Wait. I saw you there. In Elpis. No. I did not. But I did. I did. A lingering trace of impossibility. And a truth that fills my heart. My memories remain clouded, I fear. However, they have revealed to me one possible course. You must travel to Elpis, to the time when Hermes served as its chief. In glimpsing the Exarch's memories, not only did I make his summoning magic mine own, I also mastered the workings of this tower, which, having absorbed my empowered essence, now harbors an abundance of energy. As such, I believe I can deliver you unto the past, unto that place and that precise moment. Given the eons that must be traversed, the gateway will not be fully formed. Your form will be less tangible still than those warriors of light I had summoned. In all likelihood, none will be able to see or hear you. Yet even should you manage to interact with others, you will be unable to effect meaningful change. For the reality you wish to save, the reality to which you must return, exists as a result of the final days. You cannot reshape the past to undo the tragedies of the present. Cannot unmake the sorrow and suffering fated to come. In full knowledge of this, will you still entrust your life to your foe and make the journey? Very well. I shall cast you unto the river of time. Let this be my final act. You must input the commands. I no longer have the authority. First, you must reconfigure the systems, that the tower's ether may be channeled for the magic. The preparations are complete. The gateway will soon open. Return at once to the ocular. All appears to be in order. The ether flows unimpeded. The magic should consume every last mote of my essence. Why are you surprised? Did I not say that this will be my final act? Lord Zodiac is no more. There is nothing for me here. The ones I love and long to see again are waiting in that promised land, beyond memory and dream. Now go, warrior of light. Go, and do not look back. Well, Hydaelyn, I take my leave of you. Yours is the mantle of the last of us. May you have the joy of it, the burden and the solitude. It falls to you now. You and your champion to save our star.